There are many fields out there that many of us may be going into where we will run into circumstances where we may see a child who is being abused or neglected. Um, if we are a mandated reporter, we're legally obligated to report this to the government and to have CPS look into it and hopefully get some help for the child and get them out of the situation if necessary. So who are these mandated reporters? There are a lot of them. It tends to be people who work with children, or elderly people specifically, but as well as other situations. So these people are physicians, licensed master social workers, dentists, licensed bachelor social workers, physician's assistants, registered social services technicians, registered dental hygienists, social services technicians, medical examiners, persons employed in a professional capacity in any office or of the friend of the court, nurses, school administrators, physical therapist assistants, athletic trainers, licensed emergency medical care providers, school counselors, audiologists, teachers, psychologists, law enforcement officers, marriage and family therapists, members of the clergy, licensed professional counselors, regulated child care providers, social workers, physical therapists, occupational therapists, employers of an organization or entity that, as a result of federal funding, statutes, regulations, or contracts, would be prohibited from reporting in the absence of a mandate or court order, eligibility specialists, family independent manager or specialists, social services specialists, social work specialists, social work specialist managers, and welfare service specialists. There's a lot of people out there watching out for kiddos. So if you suspect something, what do you do now? Reports should be made as soon as there are signs of abuse or neglect. If you begin to just start noticing slight things, as teachers specifically, they will keep track of it until there is something to report. Reports can be made through a phone call to Child Protective Services or through an online reporting system. If an oral report is made within 72 hours, the reporting person should file a written report. If you suspect that a child is in immediate danger, you should call 911 before filing an official report. Reporting suspected abuse and neglect to a supervisor is not sufficient for a report. You need to make a direct report to CPS yourself. So included in your report should be the child's name and age, a description of the abuse or neglect you see or suspect, the names and address of the child's parents and or guardians, who the child lives with, and other information that might tell more about the abuse and or neglect. Also needs to be included the names and addresses of the primary caretaker, the name and birthdays of everyone who lives in the house, the name and birthday of the suspected perpetrator or perpetrators, if you believe there is more than one, where the abuse or neglect may have taken place, if you know that, and what exactly made you suspect that there was abuse or neglect going on. You can report online. You can submit a DHS 3200 form, or you can make a verbal report by calling the Michigan's Mandated Reporter Hotline, 855-444-3911. You can also visit Michigan Bridges at this website, and they can help you with this process as well. So, there are many types of abuse and neglect, and these are, it's like 10 main ones, a lot of that we have heard of, most people have heard of. So the first one is physical, and this is when you purposely hurt another person. So some ways that people are physically abused can be by assault, scolding or burning, physical punishments, force feeding or lack of feeding, inappropriate use of restraints, misuse of medication, involuntary isolation, purposely making uncomfortable situations, unexplained falls, bruising patterns, injuries at different healing stages. The next one is sexual abuse. This is abusive behavior that is sexual in nature. This can be any non-consensual sexual activity, rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault, sexual harassment, inappropriate touching, sexual teasing or innuendos, indecent exposure, sexual photography, or forced use of pornography. Next is discriminatory abuse. This is unfair treatment because of an aspect of identity of a person. These aspects could include their race or religion, gender, age, marital status, disability, or sexual orientation. And the way that they can be abused because of this is verbal or physical abuse in public, harassment, derogatory comments, hate mail or trolling on social media, property damage, denying access to aids needed, such as communication or mobility devices, substandard service, denying access to basic rights relating to an aspect of identity. Next is psychological abuse, or often referred to as emotional abuse. This can be controlling or manipulating someone using emotional tactics. Some of these tactics could be not letting them make their own choices, forced isolation, denying access to communication or mobility aids, denying access to cultural or religious practices, prevention of accessing medical services, not respecting privacy, use of threats, fear, or bribes, belittling or patronizing behavior, cyberbullying, intimidation, humiliation, bullying, threats, or harassment, or verbal abuse. Next is financial abuse. We don't see this quite as much in kids, but you can see effects of it. This could be kids having their money or possessions stolen and have lasting effects because of that. It can include theft, scams, misuse of money, or even just misusing the things they have. Next is organizational or institutional abuse. This could be institutions abusing the people in their care. So you could see it in schools. You can also see it a lot in daycares, or in the case of older people, nursing homes. In this type of abuse, there's often a lack of care. There's a neglect of dignity and privacy. There's poor professional practice. The institutions are overcrowded and disorganized. There's unnecessarily rigid regimes. There's a lack of clear leadership. There can often also be a high staff turnover, creating a lot of instability in this organization. Discouragement of visitors, inadequate provisions of food and or drink, misuse of medication, lack of independence and choice, lack of respect for cultural and religious needs, failure to respond to complaints, and limiting or controlling communication. Next is domestic abuse. This is another pretty popular one, common one that we hear about, unfortunately. And this is using a behavior to gain or control power. Used in this is physical violence, psychological and emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, and forced marriages. Next is modern slavery. This is any type of slavery that still happens today in the 21st century, such as human trafficking, domestic servitude, forced labor, child marriage, sexual exploration, prostitution or pornography, debt exploration, or descent-based slavery. Next is self-neglect. This is when someone puts their own health at risk. We may not see this in younger kids, but as kids begin to get older, as they get into high school and stuff, you may begin to see this. And this could be poor living conditions, not taking care of themselves, not seeking medical attention, not seeking social care support, and unwillingness to manage personal affairs, or even the inability to manage their personal affairs. And finally, we have neglect, which is just any unkept or dirty environment, malnutrition, untreated injuries, lack of basic necessities such as food, heating, clothing, isolation, lack of social engagement, poor physical condition or personal hygiene, pressure sores or ulcers, and untaken medication. So what are some red flags to look out for? The first one could be frequent injuries or unexplained injuries. This could be like, are they frequent? Is this child getting hurt a lot? Is their story staying consistent with how they are getting injured? And also just keep an eye out for welts, burns, cuts, broken bones, anything that looks abnormal and not natural. Next could be unusual bruising patterns. especially in unusual places such as torso, back, butt, thighs, neck, places where they wouldn't get a bruise just from falling and hurting themselves like a kid would. You can also look for patterns that may suggest the use of something like a belt or a hand. Next, you can look for changes in behavior, especially if it's unexpected behavior or like a sudden change. Some of these behaviors could be withdrawing, anxiety, depression, aggression. Also, keep an eye out for if the child is fearing going home or fearing going with someone. You can also keep an eye out for regression. If they are going backwards and not progressing, that could be another red flag. And then finally, also inappropriate knowledge about sexual behavior or doing inappropriate sexual things could be a very strong red flag to look for. Next, you can look at parents' actions. If they don't seem concerned about their child getting hurt, not getting medical help when they need it, can be a red flag. Conflicting or inadequate explanations. So if their explanations aren't lining up with their child's about why they're injured or anything like that, or just kind of blowing off altogether. Also harsh discipline or alcohol and drug abuse. And as for signs of neglect, just keep an eye out for malnourishment, poor hygiene, inadequate clothing, whether that's in size or for the weather. If they're showing up in clothes that aren't proper for the weather, that could be a concern. If the child has consistent body odor, or if their needs overall are not being met. So, as a reporter, you are protected. You cannot get in trouble for making a report in good faith or for cooperating in an investigation. Reports are usually made anonymously. The family will not know that you are the one that made the report. Because of the child protection laws, mandated reporters are protected against retaliation. In Michigan, mandated reporters do not have to worry about civil or criminal liability. However, if you do not make a report, you can face criminal penalties such as jail and or fines. You will no longer have civil liability protections, and you could be liable for damage that happens to the child. These are my references, and thank you for watching.